How did you deal with loss?
Faith. You know, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. The church has been a big part of my life.
On the set of James Bond, Pierce Brosnan's icy glare locked onto his co-star, a simmering hatred that only insiders knew. By the time filming wrapped, Brosnan had written down 7 names, the actors he vowed to never forgive. But why, and which star pushed him past his breaking point? Pierce Brosnan has long been the epitome of suave, the smooth-talking Irishman whose charm lit up the screen as James Bond and whose refined persona made him a favorite in both Hollywood and Europe. But while the world has seen his polished exterior, his dazzling smile, and his effortless grace, few know the real story behind the scenes. Fame, after all, is rarely a smooth road, and Brosnan's career has been dotted with personal tensions, quiet frustrations, and relationships that left their mark. Today, we peel back the curtain on the 7 co-stars who tested Pierce Brosnan the most, the actors and actresses who challenged his patience, rubbed him the wrong way, or created moments of friction on and off set. This is not a simple list of enemies or tabloid gossip. It's a look at the complex human side of a man often seen only as a silver screen icon. What makes these stories so fascinating is that they reveal a side of Brosnan many never get to see. The vulnerable artist, the perfectionist professional, and sometimes the man quietly grinding his teeth behind a camera lens. From rising stars who clashed with his rhythm to seasoned legends who stirred his insecurities, these co-stars each tell a story about power, pressure, and the fragile chemistry of creative collaboration. So sit back as we journey through the tensions and trials of Pierce Brosnan's remarkable career. You'll discover surprising feuds, unexpected disappointments, and the raw, emotional undercurrents that come with standing under the brightest lights in the world. Teri Hatcher. When Pierce Brosnan signed on for Tomorrow Never Dies, expectations were sky high. The Bond franchise was roaring back, and Brosnan, with his smooth demeanor and sharp tuxedoed elegance, was riding high as the face of the world's most famous spy. But what fans didn't see was the tension simmering between him and his Bond girl co-star, Teri Hatcher. A tension that would leave a bitter taste long after the cameras stopped rolling. Teri Hatcher was a rising star at the time, best known for her breakout role as Lois Lane in Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. She was glamorous, witty, and magnetic on screen. But behind the scenes, Brosnan found himself frustrated by a set of delays and complications he hadn't anticipated. According to insiders, Teri was frequently late to set, sometimes due to personal reasons that the production team whispered about but never publicly explained. For an actor like Brosnan, who prided himself on professionalism and punctuality, this slow pace tested his patience. Their on-screen chemistry, sizzling, charged, unforgettable, masked the off-screen chill. Brosnan would later admit in interviews that they didn't get along, noting with characteristic restraint that working with Teri was not the best experience. He was especially irritated when she kept him waiting during long shoot days, leaving him pacing the set in his finely tailored Bond suit, forced to burn hours he would have rather spent perfecting his craft. But what made this tension more striking was how it contrasted with the image projected to the world. Fans watching the movie saw a perfectly paired Bond and Bond girl, trading sultry glances and fighting villains side by side. Only those behind the camera knew how carefully that illusion had been crafted, and how much effort it took Brosnan to push through the frustration and deliver the iconic performance audiences expected. Even years later, Brosnan rarely spoke openly about the friction, preferring to take the high road in public. But those close to the production knew the truth. Teri Hatcher was one co-star who had left him quietly seething. And though the film went on to become a box office hit, the experience behind it was a reminder to Brosnan that not every glamorous pairing comes without its private storms. Shaun Bean. When Pierce Brosnan stepped into the iconic role of James Bond in GoldenEye, he wasn't just reviving a legendary franchise. He was entering into battle with one of the most intense co-stars he would ever face, Shaun Bean. Cast as Alec Trevelyan, the treacherous 006, Bean brought a dark, brooding energy to the screen, delivering one of the most memorable Bond villains of the modern era. But behind the scenes, that same intensity created a subtle but very real clash between the two actors. Shaun Bean is known for his method approach, immersing himself so deeply into his roles that it can sometimes blur the line between performance and real life. Brosnan, on the other hand, comes from a school of acting built on charm, professionalism, and balance, where the work turns on precision rather than all-consuming emotional weight. From the first day of filming, the differences in their styles began to show. According to insiders, Brosnan found Bean's relentless intensity both admirable and exhausting. Scenes that could have been wrapped in a few takes often stretched longer as Bean dug deeper, demanding reshoots to capture every shadow of emotion. For Brosnan, who valued efficiency and rhythm on set, it felt like wading through molasses. There were whispered moments when Brosnan was seen sighing quietly or stepping aside, shaking his head as yet another take was called. What's more, the natural tension between their characters, former allies turned enemies, began to bleed off-screen. While the actors were polite in interviews and public appearances, those close to the production noticed they rarely spent time together off-set. Their conversations were limited, focused strictly on the work, and often tinged with a faint frostiness. Brosnan, used to smooth social interactions with co-stars, felt off balance, unsure how to break through Bean's brooding intensity. One production assistant even recalled a moment when Brosnan muttered under his breath, "It's a Bond film, not Shakespeare," after a particularly drawn-out scene rehearsal. That small line captured the undercurrent of irritation, a feeling that, while they respected each other's talent, they weren't necessarily a natural fit. Despite the behind-the-scenes tension, GoldenEye became a smash hit, and the dynamic between Brosnan and Bean remains one of the film's greatest strengths. But for Brosnan, the experience was a reminder that sometimes working with brilliant actors means navigating creative clashes and personality mismatches, all while keeping the cameras rolling. Rosman Pike. By the time Die Another Day hit production, Pierce Brosnan was a Bond veteran, confident, polished, and used to commanding the set with his calm authority. But when Rosman Pike arrived on set, the energy shifted in unexpected ways. Pike, then a rising star fresh out of Oxford, was sharp, intellectual, and intensely prepared. She approached her role as Miranda Frost with meticulous precision, dissecting her character's motives, gestures, and even the subtlest line deliveries. At first, Brosnan admired her commitment. He respected actors who cared deeply about their craft, and Pike certainly fit that mold. But as filming progressed, her intensity sometimes clashed with the rhythm Brosnan was used to. Where he preferred to flow smoothly through takes, trusting the instincts honed by years in front of the camera, Pike often wanted to stop, analyze, and discuss. She'd request extra rehearsals, question the motivations behind scenes, and push for multiple retakes to fine-tune the emotional beats. For Brosnan, who thrived on efficiency and trusted his natural charm to carry a scene, these constant pauses became a source of quiet irritation. He was seen at times standing to the side, arms folded, politely smiling but clearly restless, waiting for yet another technical or emotional recalibration. One crew member recalled an afternoon when Brosnan, after yet another delayed scene, softly quipped, "The Ice Queen isn't just in character, she's in the entire production." Their off-screen relationship remained professional, but the spark audiences saw between Bond and Miranda Frost on screen masked a subtle undercurrent of tension. Brosnan, always diplomatic in interviews, never publicly voiced his frustrations. But those close to the production knew that Rosman Pike's cerebral, detail-oriented style pushed him in ways he didn't always appreciate. Yet, to his credit, Brosnan recognized her talent. Even as she challenged his patience, he acknowledged her as an actress destined for great things, a prediction that would prove true as Pike's career soared in the years following. Still, on the set of Die Another Day, their clashing work rhythms created a quiet but persistent friction, making Pike one of the rare co-stars who left Brosnan both impressed and exasperated. Halle Berry. When Die Another Day introduced Halle Berry as the stunning, no-nonsense NSA agent Jinx, it marked a major moment in the Bond franchise, not just because Berry was fresh off her Oscar win, but because her presence brought a level of media frenzy that the production hadn't quite prepared for. For Pierce Brosnan, who was used to commanding the spotlight as 007, the sudden shift in attention created an undercurrent of frustration that followed them throughout filming. Berry arrived on set with global buzz swirling around her. She was the it girl of the moment, a history-making actress who had just shattered barriers in Hollywood with her Academy Award win for Monsters Ball. The press was hungry for every detail about her Bond role, flooding the production with interviews, paparazzi, and constant headlines. And while Brosnan was no stranger to fame, the media's obsession with Berry changed the atmosphere on set, often pulling attention away from the film's longtime leading man. Insiders reported that Brosnan, ever the gentleman in public, privately struggled with the distractions. Scenes were sometimes delayed due to press commitments. Reshoots were complicated by the high-profile demands on Berry's time, and Brosnan occasionally found himself cooling his heels while Berry's team negotiated everything from lighting setups to wardrobe tweaks. For an actor who prized efficiency and smooth operations, the constant interruptions wore thin. One crew member recalled a particularly telling moment when Brosnan, waiting in costume on set, quietly sighed and remarked, "It's the Bond film, not the Berry film." Though he never voiced outright anger, his subtle comments revealed the quiet irritation brewing beneath his polished exterior. It wasn't personal dislike. Brosnan respected Berry's talent and charisma, but rather the feeling of being sidelined in his own cinematic universe. Adding to the tension was the challenge of on-screen chemistry. While their scenes sparkled with the playful tension audiences craved, off-screen, their working rhythms didn't always align. Berry's playful improvisations sometimes clashed with Brosnan's more structured approach, creating moments where the actor had to recalibrate his performance on the fly. Despite these challenges, Die Another Day became one of the franchise's biggest commercial hits, cementing Berry's place in Bond history. But for Brosnan, the experience left a mixed legacy, one where admiration, frustration, and the weight of celebrity collided on a set that tested his patience like few others. Robin Williams. In 1990's beloved family comedy Mrs. Doubtfire, Pierce Brosnan played the sleek, charming Stu Dunmire, the dashing new boyfriend of Sally Field's character, opposite none other than the legendary Robin Williams. On screen, Brosnan was the picture of sophistication, the polished foil to Williams's chaotic, cross-dressing nanny antics. But off-screen, Brosnan found himself in a whirlwind he hadn't quite expected, one that left him, at times, both dazzled and drained. Robin Williams was a force of nature. Known for his non-stop improvisation, lightning-quick wit, and boundless energy, Williams could transform even the quietest moment on set into a full-blown comedy sketch. For many actors, working alongside him was a thrill, but for Brosnan, who thrived on structure and precision, it was often overwhelming. Brosnan would later recount that while he deeply admired Williams's genius, he sometimes struggled to keep pace. Scenes that should have been simple took far longer as Williams riffed on lines, tested out new jokes, or sent the crew into fits of laughter that disrupted the shoot. Brosnan, ever the composed professional, would stand patiently, waiting for the energy to settle, but inside, he was quietly itching to get the scene back on track. One memorable moment, shared by a crew member, perfectly captured their dynamic. During a lunch break, Brosnan was seen sitting quietly with his script, reviewing his lines when Williams bounded over, launching into an impromptu skit. Brosnan smiled politely, nodding along. But when Williams finally dashed off, Brosnan reportedly muttered with a wry grin, "It's like living inside a hurricane." Yet beneath the frustration was a deep respect. Brosnan recognized the incredible vulnerability behind Williams's comedic mask, the way he poured his whole being into making others laugh, even at the cost of his own emotional exhaustion. And as the production progressed, Brosnan learned to adapt, finding moments to embrace the chaos and even letting Williams' infectious energy pull him slightly out of his own carefully crafted shell. Their working relationship wasn't one of hatred or rivalry, but of adjustment, two wildly different artistic spirits learning to coexist. For Brosnan, it was an experience that left him both drained and grateful, a reminder that sometimes brilliance and exhaustion walk hand in hand. Meryl Streep. When Pierce Brosnan signed on to Mamma Mia, he knew he was stepping into unfamiliar territory. It wasn't a slick spy thriller or a sharp action drama. It was a musical, packed with ABBA songs, sun-drenched Greek island vibes, and most daunting of all, starring alongside the one and only Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep's reputation preceded her. The Queen of American Acting, winner of multiple Academy Awards and widely regarded as one of the greatest performers of her generation. Brosnan admired her like everyone else, but stepping onto the set with her brought out an unexpected tension inside him. For years, Brosnan had been celebrated as a leading man, admired for his presence, charm, and charisma. But now, standing next to Streep, he sometimes felt small. Brosnan was no stranger to pressure, but the weight of acting opposite someone as commanding as Streep stirred up quiet insecurities. Scenes they shared were often lighthearted and romantic, but behind the camera, Brosnan reportedly worried about whether he could match her emotional depth. While Streep glided effortlessly from comedic moments to raw vulnerability, Brosnan sometimes found himself second-guessing his choices, wondering if he was holding his own. Crew members recall moments when Brosnan would rehearse a scene, glance over at Streep, and then quietly retreat to a corner, running lines again, wanting to make sure he hit the right emotional notes. One insider even described him, once joking nervously, "When you're next to Meryl, you realize how much further you've got to climb." Adding to the challenge was the fact that Brosnan wasn't a trained singer. While Streep approached the musical numbers with characteristic grace, Brosnan struggled, pushing himself into uncomfortable territory vocally. Though he tackled the songs with determination, insiders said he often felt exposed, knowing critics would inevitably compare his performance to hers, and knowing he'd come up short. Despite the quiet frustrations and self-imposed pressure, Brosnan admired Streep deeply. He recognized that the tension he felt was less about personal dislike and more about his own internal battle. The drive to prove himself, the fire of being overshadowed, the challenge of stepping outside his comfort zone. Working with Meryl Streep wasn't easy, but it was, without question, one of the most formative experiences of his career. Colin Firth. On the surface, Pierce Brosnan and Colin Firth seemed like a perfect match. Two polished, sharply dressed British actors with international fan bases, starring side by side in Mamma Mia as part of the trio of potential fathers to Amanda Seyfried's character. But behind the scenes, their working relationship was layered with a subtle, simmering tension that few outsiders could detect. Colin Firth, known for his meticulous intellectual approach to acting, approached each scene with a thoughtful precision. He was careful, deliberate, often wanting to explore the nuances of a character's motivations before stepping in front of the camera. Brosnan, by contrast, had always favored a looser, more instinctive style, trusting his natural charisma and long-honed instincts to guide his performance. From the beginning, these differences created a quiet undercurrent of friction. According to those on set, Firth sometimes wanted to rehearse lines multiple times, dissecting phrasing or emotional beats, while Brosnan, eager to keep the momentum flowing, grew quietly restless. It wasn't that they disliked each other. Both were consummate professionals, but their personalities simply didn't mesh smoothly. One particularly telling moment came during a group scene rehearsal, when Firth raised concerns about a comedic beat, wanting to adjust the timing to make it land better. Brosnan, after patiently listening, reportedly gave a polite but slightly clipped response. "Let's not overthink it. We've all got a song to sing." To some, it was a light-hearted quip. To others, it was a subtle sign of his growing impatience. Off-camera, their interactions were civil but limited. While some cast members bonded over dinners and late-night drinks, Brosnan and Firth were rarely seen socializing together, preferring to retreat to their own circles after the day's work. Brosnan, who enjoyed a relaxed camaraderie with the rest of the ensemble, sometimes found Firth's reserved nature difficult to penetrate. Despite the low-level rivalry, Both actors delivered strong, memorable performances, and the film became a global hit. For Brosnan, though, working alongside Colin Firth was a reminder that even among peers, subtle ego clashes and creative differences can bubble beneath the surface, shaping not just the on-screen magic, but the hidden dynamics of life on set.